Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. Today from Nebraska, I got Kelly Hunter. Welcome.
Hi, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're able to come on. And the way we start things off is with 3 random questions. So are you ready?
Oh, yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Latest TV show or movie you watched?
Oh, let's see. The latest movie I watched was a really bad pick and it was really random. I couldn't even tell you the name of it, but I'm not a huge TV watcher. But recently I watched, it's called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on Hulu.
Okay.
It's just kind of trashy reality
All
TV.
right.
So for
There we
some
go.
drama. Yeah.
All right. Second question. Most interesting place you've ever played a match in?
Interesting. Maybe not super interesting, but cool for me. Well, I guess I didn't play in this match, but we had our stadium match last
Mm-hmm.
year where we played in Memorial Stadium. So that was a really, really special thing to be a part of just for our team and our state and our sport and
Right.
just for women's sports in general. But for me playing, I would say I played overseas in Turkey. And so it's one of the top leagues in the world and just
Yeah.
getting to play in a bunch of different gyms there and these renowned teams getting to
Yeah.
play in those gyms and play against amazing players, I would say that would be the coolest for me.
All right. And the third question is kind of a fun one. So between Coach Cook, Jalen, Jordan, and you, who has the best sneaker game?
Sneaker game. Ooh. I would have to say Jordan because she is as an individual sponsored by Nike, so
Yeah.
she has a million pairs of shoes. And
Ah,
I think
okay.
she said the other day her overflow now has gone into her garage. So,
Oh my
but she
God.
doesn't get to show it off because we're an Adidas school. And so
Right.
whenever we have an off day or anything, she dresses up or not in our sports gear.
Yeah.
She's always got her Nikes on. So she's definitely winning the shoe game.
All right. There we go. So welcome to the podcast. And how's the season going so far?
Pretty good. We just opened up our Big Ten with UCLA and USC, the new California teams in the
Yeah.
Big Ten. We had a really tough preseason, played a ton of ranked teams and traveled a little bit. We went to Louisville twice and played in the Yum Center twice, which is where the Final Four is going to be. So that's always exciting. But we're starting the grind of our really long Big Ten season and a lot more travel for us now, which
Yeah.
is good and bad. I think sometimes it's fun to get in different gyms and see different environments, but with school and training and midweek games, it presents its challenges. But we've been grinding and I think we're excited about the next chapter of our season.
Excellent. Yeah. My daughter and I caught a game there a few weeks ago. I think you guys played at home against Creighton. And
Mhm.
like just a random Wednesday night or Tuesday night, and it's sold out. It's just got to be so much fun to play in that environment.
Yeah, every time we do our starting lineup and we have our videos and the lights go off, we have this light show where everyone holds up their Husker Lights app and it goes with the music. And
Oh, cool.
I was just even last night looking up at the video and it changes every so often. I'm like, this is cool. It's got to be so hard to come in here and play. But yeah, we've been sold out, I think, since 2001. So
Wow.
when we're recruiting, we're always like, hey, this place has been sold out since long before you were born at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So now for you, let's go back. When did you first discover volleyball?
When I was really, really young, I couldn't even put an age on it if I had to, just as long as I can remember. My family is a huge volleyball family. All of my aunts played. My mom actually played for Nebraska when Terry Pettit was the coach.
Oh, wow.
So it's always been a family thing. And my sister, she's 10 years older than me. She played for Missouri. So for us, that was pretty close, about a 5 hour drive. And just me being the youngest, I always got toted along to all my siblings' sports games and all that stuff. So I was the kind of annoying little sister who always wanted to pepper and needed a ball and was over in a corner passing it against the wall while my sister was playing. But I would just say, yeah, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to follow in my sister and my mom's footsteps.
Nice. And then over the years, playing in college, in playing professionally, and now coaching, what was the hook, or what is the hook that volleyball has on you?
I think it's the team aspect and just I love the way in our sport you come together after every single point. You have a really tight huddle. I love the way it's not one person out there. For example, like I played tennis and I tried to play singles and I was like, I can't do singles. Like I need someone to talk to, I need someone to collaborate with. So I played doubles, but I think also it's just such a fast-paced game, and it's really cool because after you make an error or after the play ends, you get another shot right away.
Right.
It's not like football or baseball where you have the ball for so long. It's just always bang bang, and I just love the opportunity to try again right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you said you play tennis. Any other sports playing you played as well?
I played basketball in high school as well. I mean, other things when I was younger, but in
Yeah.
high school I played basketball, tennis, and volleyball because they were
Yeah.
all different seasons also.
Nice. Yeah, I had Eric Shoji on, and he was a tennis player and volleyball player, and he said it was helpful for him to just having that solo sport where you got used to having the pressure on you, but then when you played volleyball, like you were saying, you have other people to pick you up. It's not just all on your shoulders.
Tennis for sure, and any individual sport is obviously a mental battle. So I think that's a great point by him, just learning more about yourself, more about like your failure recovery, what your mental self-talk is. You have a lot of time to sit in that space, and that can be good and bad, but there's usually a lot of learning when it's just a solo sport like that. But I think too the physical benefits of playing different sports and tennis especially is so much agility, so much quickness, hand-eye coordination, all that fun stuff. And so I think it's a great kind of complement for volleyball players too.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, did you play club as well or just high school ball?
I played clubs, so I played for Nebraska Juniors. So at the time when I was in high school, Nebraska Juniors, they only had one team for 18, 17, 16s, and 15s. It wasn't one of those clubs that had like a youth program or three teams in each age division. So it was kind of the central place for people all around Nebraska. So I had
Okay.
teammates from Kearney, from Grand Island, who drove every day to Lincoln, and I
Wow.
was from Omaha and I drove to Lincoln, not every day, but twice a week usually. And
Yeah.
then it was pretty competitive back then.
Oh wow. And now how important was playing club for your development and being able to play at that next level?
For me, especially, I had the same coach for high school and for club. Her
Oh,
name's
okay.
Gwen Egbert. She's really well known around Nebraska and has been coaching for a really long time and now still does lessons and things like that. But just having, especially the consistency of the same coach, and a lot of my same high school teammates played on that club too. And we were pretty good in high school. And so just having that consistency and then being able to play your sport essentially all year round with obviously some breaks in there,
Yeah.
but playing other sports but also playing volleyball in the off season for from high school was huge. And just like I said, having the same coach and consistency and always trying to get better and not taking a break and then coming back to high school super rusty, I think was really, really important.
Yeah. And now were you always a setter through club and high school and obviously college and pro?
So I didn't start setting until my freshman year of high school because I was always really tall when I was younger. I think I've been the same height since about eighth grade or freshman year, and I'm 5'10", which now for college volleyball isn't really that tall. It's kind of short, but I was always kind of the taller one. So I was a middle for a really long time because everyone just figures throw the tallest kid in the middle, maybe they'll get some blocks, stuff
Yeah.
like that. But so I was a hitter and then I started setting my freshman year. My freshman, sophomore, and junior year, we ran a 6-2. So I would set in the back, hit in the front.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing because like I just have this hitter's mentality. But did that, and then my senior year of high school ran a 5-1 and was only setting, and then all throughout college and pro have been just a setter.
And now, were you one of these people that were reluctant to be a setter? Because I had Micah on, Micah Christensen, and he said when you walk, he had to be forced to be a setter. He was an outside hitter, and he goes, when you walk into a gym, somebody hits a ball, it snaps your head. When you're setting, nobody looks in the gym, and it's
Mhm.
like that's the thing that he really liked about being a hitter.
I think for me, I remember going to a camp. I think it was Creighton's camp because I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, from Papillion. So I remember going to Creighton's camp and I remember they asked me, well, do you want to be a hitter or setter? They're like, you're a hitter, right? And I was like, well, and I was young at this time. I don't remember how old, but I said, if I want to play in college, I think I'm going to have to be a setter.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the moment that I realized if I want to have a really successful college career and play for a national championship, I'll probably have to be a setter. So there was some of that oh, I still want to be a hitter type mentality. But I think, setting is so fun and you have such a unique opportunity to be a leader, to kind of control your side of the net. And there's so many fun different things and just thinking about offense and decisions. And it's not easy by any means, but it's a fun type of, I guess, power, if you want to call it
Yeah.
that, as opposed to where when you're hitting, you get to show your power and really take control over the match and end all these points with some kills. So
Yeah.
I was definitely missing the hitting, but I kind of read the writing on the wall that I wasn't going to be super tall, athletic, big
Yeah.
arm, and might have to be a setter.
Yeah, I like that. I like that description of being the mind of, instead of ending the game with your arm, you're sort of controlling it with your mind. That is a great way of a perspective of looking at being a setter.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy by
No,
any means.
no.
It's very nuanced and there's a lot of detail that goes into it.
Oh yes, absolutely. You're the quarterback on the floor essentially. Yep.
Yep.
And now, what was your path to Nebraska?
So like I said, I'm from Papillion. My high school coach actually played for Nebraska as well. So there's just kind of that connection there. Being a little girl growing up in Nebraska, everyone is just looking at Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah.
And one person in general that I really connected with was Gina Mancuso. So she was 4 years older than me, but she was from my same hometown. She went to Papillion La Vista, and I went to Papillion La Vista South, which was a newer school. I think my senior year was about their 10th year being open. But it was really cool for me to see someone from my quote unquote like small town, not
Right.
anything super small, but my small town go to Nebraska and play and start for them. I just remember in our old gym was the Coliseum. It seated about 4,000. After the games, all the players and even Coach Cook would stand on the court and just wait for people to come up to them and sign autographs.
Oh
We
wow.
don't do that anymore because our players would be here till 11 p.m. or
Yeah.
midnight. But I just remember every single game, I always waited in line for Gina, and then I waited in line to say hi to Coach Cook too. So just having someone from my town and someone that I felt like I knew on the team really inspired me. And so I looked at other schools and made visits and all of that stuff. But I think just being a Nebraska girl and my mom playing for Nebraska, I think it was always where my heart was going to land.
Yeah.
And it I looked at other schools, but it was always Nebraska for me.
Nice. And now, looking back, the accomplishments you've done at Nebraska is amazing. What were some of the key highlights if you had to pick a couple that really stand out for you?
I think obviously when I played, we won two national championships, so those are kind of the forefront of my mind, obviously. But the cool thing that I like to do between the two is just kind of compare them
Hmm.
because my our first one was my junior year or my sophomore year. I redshirted a year, so it was my third year at Nebraska, but only my sophomore season technically. But we had some struggles throughout the season, and I remember very vividly we lost two matches in a row at home to Minnesota and Wisconsin, which it's hard to come into Devaney and play, and teams get really fired up to play us, and it's just not common for us to lose two matches, especially at home in a row.
Yeah.
So I remember after that game, we had a chat in the locker room for about an hour. We just hashed out some stuff and we went on to win every single match for the rest of the year. So
Wow.
just a really cool experience there on teammateship and communication and just getting better, honestly, and acknowledging where we were and acknowledging where we wanted to go and what our goals were. And so that was really special in the way that we worked through things and ended up coming out on top after a really crappy weekend for our team. And then I always compare that to my senior year when we won again. It was a very different atmosphere. We had two new coaches. There was this story kind of told to us that we weren't going to be very good because we graduated four seniors who were All-Americans, stuff like that. And so that season was more so us writing our own story and essentially kind of proving people wrong and kind of being the underdog and having a chip on your shoulder. And that team was just really close knit. we all had the exact same goals, the same work ethic, and just with the new coaches and new ideas, it was a really fun learning time. And even for me, I made some changes in my setting technique and just my decision making and stuff like that as a senior. So I would just say the for me it's about like the process and the experiences and the people that you're doing it with, because obviously everyone in our jobs wants to win and they want to
Right.
win that final match, but the things that I remember aren't even the final points or even those matches. Like I remember the processes and the season and the relationships that I made. So for me it's about kind of the connections and how teams work through things that makes it really special.
All right, excellent. And now, something I discovered, coming into this podcast, doing college volleyball is, women's college volleyball starts off, in end of August essentially. And as a freshman, it's got to be so hard to, you're starting starting college, playing volleyball, maybe a new home. Looking back on your freshman year, how was your first, that first year for you?
I would say for me, it was a bit of a struggle. And I think there's always an adjustment when you go from high school to college in life, in sports, whatever sport it is, there's
Right.
always that adjustment. And for me, I think I let not like the pressure of being a Nebraska volleyball player, but the pressure that I put on myself to want to be the best
Yeah.
was almost a hindrance at that point. And I think there's a healthy amount of pressure and wanting to be good and being unsatisfied and all of that stuff. There's a healthy amount of that. And I think for me, I had dreamed so much about being a Nebraska volleyball player and wanting to start and wanting to contribute that I was just almost clawing at it too much and reaching too much and a little bit too tense. And so I think setters in general are perfectionists and you want to be perfect every single play, but that's just not realistic when you touch the ball every single play. And I think that perfectionism kind of just tore at me all every day, every
Yeah.
practice, all that type of stuff. And so I think I learned that lesson my sophomore year because I redshirted my second year, which isn't very typical. But I think that second year I kind of learned, okay, the way I was approaching every day or the way I was talking to myself wasn't beneficial and it wasn't making me or anyone around me better. And so I had this beautiful opportunity of a redshirt sophomore year to learn more about myself and learn more about how I wanted to be and how I functioned at a high level. And so I was really grateful for that year because, like I said, freshman year was a bit of a struggle. And then
Yeah.
I had to learn those lessons, but I was very fortunate to have that redshirt year.
And that experience has got to be so valuable to have to relate to those freshmen that are coming in. Whether they're the coming in and they're they were starting in club and now they're sitting on the bench and just you've got to be careful you don't lose those freshmen and having you that experience you're just talking about. It's got to be so beneficial for those young girls.
Yeah, especially in our gym, it's like you said, all these players who were starting on their high school teams and probably the go-to player on every team they've ever been at. And then you get in this gym where everyone's the exact same as you and everyone's the go-to player and everyone wants the ball just as much as the next person. It's an intimidating place to be, but I think the big thing that we try and preach to those freshmen is just it's going to be different. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge the fact that what you're doing isn't easy and there's going to be an adjustment period. It's just how quick you can move through that adjustment. So now we're really fortunate. A lot of our athletes and our recruits want to come in January. And so when I played, people would come in June and do summer school and
Yeah.
summer workouts and open gyms, and then we'd start the season. So nothing really organized. But now our athletes are usually coming in January. They get beach volleyball with us and a spring indoor season. May is off, and then the summer is just to grind. And usually they need to kind of lift some weights, get a little bit more
Yeah.
physical. That's a great time to do it in the summer. But I think with them coming in January, it's really beneficial and just helps that adjustment. But the biggest thing, like I said, is just letting them know that it's okay and it's gonna happen and you're gonna feel some things you probably never felt before, but well, we're here to help you through it.
Yeah. And back in your playing days, did you have any pregame rituals or certain playlists? Need to take a nap, certain meal before game?
Yeah, I was not one that was super big on any type of like superstitions or rituals or anything like that. For me, it was always about getting my mind off of the game and just relaxing. So every game we always practice, I think it's 5 hours before the game, and then we watch film and then we eat right after. So that was kind of the routine that we have here and we still do
Yeah.
at Nebraska. And so after we would eat, I would just lay down in our ready room, grab a pillow and a blanket, shut the lights off, and just kind of check out a little
Yeah.
bit. Whether I fell asleep or not, usually didn't really fall asleep just because you're excited for the game, but it was important to me to kind of relax, settle down, and then go into the game in this like nice relaxed spot rather
Yeah.
than being too amped up.
All right. So when you were playing and you had a couple of bad plays, what was your way to reset, clear your mind? When I was talking to Eric, I wiggle my toes, and then that sort of gets me back into a clear space.
For me, it was kind of just in the huddles, like grabbing someone's hand extra long or just trying to get external. But honestly, the biggest thing was just acknowledging that I've had a couple bad plays and I need help.
Yeah.
So whether it's like, hey, can you give me this positive pump up speech or whatever, it wasn't always anything like that, but just like to my hitters, for example, just like, hey, I'm having a really hard time setting this ball, like help me out. Just like I'll figure it out, but just help me out right now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of athletes when they're struggling, they just want to go inside and just like, okay, I can handle this, I can deal with it, I can do this myself. And usually some people function that way and they just kind of lock in and maybe get quiet and then they're back. But for me, it was just if I was quiet and internal, it was downhill fast. So I would just try and talk to someone, whether it was my best friend on the team or the hitters, and just letting them know where I'm at, but just getting it out and just literally getting it out of your system and then going on to the next play was really, really helpful for me.
All right. And now as a setter, for you, what was your favorite thing to set? For me, like I loved getting that tight ball that was so tight and just rescuing it off the net, drawing the blocker and it's like heads are turning. For you, what is that thing? Is it a slide? Is it a stack? What was your favorite set?
I would say a fast slide because it's just fun to set it back there and
Yeah.
just fling it back there. Um, a fast slide's always fun, but then I love to when you're front row and everyone's thinking the ball is going to go to a pin and you set a bic and there's no block up and it's a nice fast bic and everyone's ready for it, or everyone on your team is ready for it
Right.
and no one's ready on the other side. Just when they think for sure that ball is going left side and you can kind of put it somewhere else, especially on a bit because it's just a fast play.
Yeah.
I would say that's one of my favorites.
All right. So now after college, you went pro. Was that always in the cards or, how did that all come together?
Actually, no, I am one that I like to be where my feet are. And for me, my senior season, I was not thinking about life after college, what I wanted to do. I was like, I just want to be here and playing my senior season and go all the way and win. So I didn't know I wanted to play pro until probably the spring after my senior year. So I stayed and played beach one more year and then didn't do indoor volleyball, which we have after our beach season. So I just finished up some school. I was in grad school at the time, so I wanted to continue my education and do all those things. So I would say that spring I kind of realized I do have an opportunity to go overseas. I had been contacted by agents and stuff like that. And I didn't think about it during season. But after the fact in that spring, I was like, well, this is the one time in my life I can do something so cool. So I might as well go ahead and do it. And if I hate it, I hate it. If I love it, I love it.
Yeah.
But this is the one time in my life that I can. So I also went out to Anaheim with the national team and trained there and met a couple girls and made some connections and then ended up playing overseas with two girls who were in the USA gym.
Oh,
So
nice.
it all worked out really good. We had the same agent who found us a pretty good like mid-level team in Turkey that could push the top barrier. And so it was nice to have some other Americans, but I didn't always know I wanted to, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew it was something that I couldn't pass up.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure it was so helpful for playing overseas to have a couple of people you're familiar with. I've had a couple of players on and they said it's lonely. You're out there, you don't speak the language and it's just you and it's a struggle.
Yeah, I think it's something that's not talked about enough, just how hard it is to go overseas, especially if you're alone. And I don't know that life, but I have a lot of friends and former teammates who have done it, and just you need help and you need family and friends to come visit you, and hopefully you're somewhere where people want to come visit. But
Right.
I think having other Americans or people that you know on your team is crucial, and just someone to be there with you. But a lot of times you're just by yourself, and even if you do have people there, it's still, like you said, the language barrier and
Yeah.
just different cultures,
Mm-hmm.
different things like that. But I think it's getting talked about a little bit more. But now obviously there's options in the US, which
Right.
is really, really cool,
Yeah.
and shorter seasons, because overseas it's basically like a full school year, like August to May,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what team you're on and where you're at. But it can be a grind. So I think it's really cool to see what we have in the US. But I do think it's a really unique experience for you to learn about yourself, especially when you go overseas and you have all these different challenges. And I think I was talking to someone the other day. I said, I learned how to be an adult when I
Yeah.
went overseas. Like, it was the first time I had to cook for myself, I had to clean my own apartment. Like, it's just me in there. I don't have roommates. So I think it's a really cool opportunity also to go live in another country.
Mm-hmm.
Who can just go do that for 9 months, you know?
Yeah.
So as much as I love the USA leagues and what's happening in our sport and just the traction that it's been getting, I do think it's so beneficial to go overseas, just for yourself, not even volleyball wise, but just to learn about yourself.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, after playing pro, was coaching in the cards for you? Did you always want to be a coach?
I always enjoyed coaching, and at Nebraska, we have these summer camps that are a really big deal, and we always have the players work, just because you can see when a Husker walks in the gym, the all the campers are like, "Oh my gosh." They're like, "There's Lexi Rodriguez," and they like lose their mind. So it's really important for us to have our athletes work camp. But when I was a player, worked camp, loved it. My path to coaching, actually, I remember I was in Turkey and I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like, okay, I want to do this for 5 years. It
Right.
was just kind of, I like this, it's fun, but I think I want to go back to the US and finish up school and be with my family and friends.
Yeah.
And so I remember calling John and just saying, he's like, "How's it going? How are things going?" And said, "Things are going good, but I think I just want to come back and finish up grad school. Do you think I could be a grad manager?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course. Finish up your school, come get in our gym. Of course, we'd love to have you." So I came back, was a grad assistant, which you're setting up the court, you're making sure drills run smoothly. That's pretty much your only role. So I
Yeah.
was in school, helping out here, kind of around in some meetings and stuff like that, but just kind of got a little taste for it.
Yeah.
From there, I kind of just kept sticking around. Like, Nebraska is my home, and I love this program, and I love the staff, and I love everyone who's a part of all of this. And so I just wanted to stick around in whatever capacity that was. So I became a volunteer coach, which in volleyball is a step up from grad manager, because
Mm-hmm.
you can actually coach. You don't get paid anything, but you can actually coach out there. And so stepped into that role. And then what was next? Oh, our assistant coach, Tyler Hildebrand, was coming back to Nebraska, but he was with the USA Beach program and he had to go to the Olympics. So he couldn't come back until August. So I was interim assistant coach during that time, which I think was also during COVID times. So it was just a lot of Zooms,
Yeah.
recruiting Zooms, stuff like that. And then Tyler came back. I was back to volunteer. And then Tyler ends up leaving and this position is open. And then I get hired on as full-time assistant. So I think I've held basically every position possible at Nebraska aside from head coach, but just kind of realized quickly that I wasn't just a GA to finish school. I did it because I loved it
Yeah.
and didn't always plan on that. But I also remember too, after camps and stuff like that, John would always be like, "You're going to be a coach one day." And I'm like, Sure, we'll
Okay.
see. Yeah, we'll see. And then here we are working together. So it's a really cool kind of full circle
Yeah.
moment.
Excellent. And now, what has been the biggest challenge you faced when transitioning from being a player to becoming a coach?
At the start, since I only played 1 year overseas, when I came back, there were still girls on the team that I had played with.
Right.
So that was obviously very intricate. And when I was on the team and playing, I was a captain. And so just natural leader and all of those types of things. So when I first got back, I was really hesitant to speak up too much because I
Right.
didn't want any of my former teammates and the current players to think that I'm still trying to be a part of it or not let them work through things on their own.
Right.
And so that was pretty nuanced, but I think the biggest thing as I've kind of reflected back about my career is I think that starting that way kind of made me a little bit quiet at the start, whether it be feedback or just like certain little pieces of advice here and there. I think it made me a little bit more internal to start just because I didn't want to overstep any boundaries or anything like that. So I would say kind of built that habit early on that I've had to break a little bit, if that makes sense,
Yep.
just because, like I said, didn't want to overstep, but then now, or fast forward a couple years when I do finally get hired on, there's no one I played with anymore. And so just having to kind of relearn how do I cue technique before and what's my feedback loop look like and what's my style because I think I just kind of started off at the bottom, not really saying too much,
Yeah.
and then had to kind of build up my voice, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. And now, from a mentorship standpoint, how important is mentoring these younger athletes in your coaching approach, and what advice do you give them about balancing academics and athletics at Nebraska?
For me, the mentoring point is super, super important because what we do and what we ask our athletes to do is really hard. We train super hard. We try and make practice harder than the matches. We're Nebraska and we have this target on our back no matter who we're playing, where we're playing, what time we're playing. It's just you get everyone's best shot. So what we're doing is really, really difficult. And for me, I think I have a really unique experience of playing at this program for the same coach who is coaching now. And that's just very relatable. And I think that's the most beneficial thing for them is that they know that I've been them before. So like I've been through the same things, the same pressures and all of that. And so for me, it's more so about like that mentorship rather than just, hey, we need to set this ball here and do this perfect technique and all that. It's so much bigger than that for me, just because they have so much pressure put on them and it's really, really hard. And so the balance part, everyone goes through that balance of getting to college and school, and you get to choose if you go to class or not, whether anyone knows about it or not,
Right.
that's your choice. And just time management and having roommates and all these interpersonal things. And so I think I'm a good person for them to come to all the non-volleyball stuff,
Yeah.
which is most of their life. Volleyball's big, but that's also most of their life. And so for me, it's really important to, like you said, mentorship. Volleyball ends one day. I want them to all be strong young women in whatever they do after volleyball or after Nebraska. And that's kind of one of my biggest things.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I've heard, talk to a bunch of the different assistant coaches, and they talk about, they're the fun uncle, whereas, one
Yeah.
chair up is like, all right, it's a
Yeah.
different role.
Yeah. It's definitely a unique relationship with assistants and players. You're kind of that like funnel or that bridge and
Yeah.
that fun uncle. That's funny. I haven't heard that, but that is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, since being in that coaching role, what have been some of the coaching highlights for you? Was the development of players, finding the players, or some like you were talking about earlier, the big match, at the football stadium.
One of the biggest ones that stands out in my mind, I think it was 2021 when we went and we played Texas at their place in the regional final to go to the national or to go to the Final Four. And I just remember there was a narrative that Texas was going to win and that Nebraska wasn't good enough and all this stuff. That was the narrative that was out there. But I just remember the way our coaching staff that year just believed so much. And one of our things that we have, especially last year and this year, is belief is free. Like we want to help them believe. If they don't believe in themselves, It's our jobs to help them believe. And I think that match specifically in that game was just a testament of if the coaches can make them believe, then they're going to believe and it's going to be beautiful. And that was exactly what happened. And it was just a really emotional match and just everyone was dialed in and everyone I don't even remember what phrase we used, but it like everyone was pumping this phrase the whole game. I think it was war of attrition or something like that, which we still use now. And we are just like every time we dug a ball and we killed it, we're like war of attrition. And the staff was starting that. And so I wasn't a full-time assistant at that point. That was when I was volunteer, but just seeing, I think it was Tyler and Jalen and coach were our coaches, and they were just like, war of attrition, we're believing, you guys are believing, and then we won. So I would say that was a really good learning lesson and just a really special moment. And I'll never forget like the water bottles and after the game, splashing them on everyone and all that fun stuff. And so that was a really special moment and a really good lesson learned.
Wow, very cool. And now, we talked a little bit about earlier about that, the 90,000 person match at the football stadium. What was that atmosphere like?
Honestly, it went by in like a blink of an eye. It was a blur. There was just so many different moving parts, but I just remember like the tunnel walk. So it's a huge deal at Nebraska. We play our tunnel walk song. You walk on this red carpet, you run out of the corner, and everyone's just cheering like crazy. There's fireworks. It's unreal. So just growing up in Nebraska, watching our football team do that, and then getting to see our athletes running
Mm-hmm.
out of the tunnel, it was like the coolest thing I had ever witnessed in my life. And then I think the most emotional part was we always do a flyover with
Mm-hmm.
whatever type of plane for our football game. And just like, I remember Hannah Houston was singing the national anthem, who was from Nebraska, and she went on to sing at The Voice and was a finalist, but she was a huge volleyball fan. And I remember we met her when I played, and I was like, oh my God, it's Hannah Houston. Like, I was obsessed with her. And so she was singing the national anthem, the flyover happens, and I just remember like looking around and it's like myself, Lindsay Peterson, Nicklin, coach, everyone's like
Oh, wow.
sobbing just because it was so cool to see our team specifically, but like women in that stage and
Yep.
just like this thing that you always see football do, and then there's a girls sports team doing it. It
Right.
was just like there was not a dry eye in the stadium, I don't think. So just watching what it did for not only for us but the other Nebraska teams and just for women's sports. Like it I couldn't put it into words.
Nice. And now, playing beach, did you have any, trying to get any of the girls to try skyball serve, or would Coach Cook lose his mind if anybody busted out the skyball?
Oh gosh, we never even we'd mess around with that in beach and kind of try that, but we actually were playing the wind
Oh,
because James
okay.
from Hawaii played a lot of beach. He's our head beach coach, so we were playing the wind. So depending on what side we were on, we're like, okay, we're only not only, but like we're gonna try and set go zone.
Yeah.
Okay, we flip sides. Okay, we got to try and set red zone because there were times where if the wind was at your back and you set a go, it like hitters couldn't even reach it.
Oh,
It would just
wow.
fly right over them. So it was kind of our game plan was like, okay, we're attacking this side of the court. We're always setting this way. And like even when we hit, if you hit it high and you hit it that way, it's gonna fly out of bounds. And same for serving. So there was definitely some beach talk and some
Yeah.
beach tactics going on.
Excellent. And now, with this year's group of girls, if there's a tense moment, who's the one that's the joker right now that can like sort of break that tension when it's needed?
The Joker. I would say it's probably Rebecca and Laney. And I think the middles have adopted this phrase like we're team fun. Like when things go wrong, we're team fun. We're just gonna crack a joke or do whatever. And they have so much personality. But right now I'm really hearing Lainey, if things are going wrong, she's like, we're so fine. Like almost just making a joke out of when things aren't going well because that inevitably happens. But
Yeah.
I would say those two are kind of leading the charge, and Becca is just hilarious by nature, and she just says all these one-off comments that you just die laughing every single time. So I would say those two, they match each other's energy for sure. They're the ones that are always like chest bumping and
Yeah.
pushing people and stuff like that. They have great energy, but I think they've done a good job of highlighting the good that we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
even when things feel bad, which is super, super important.
All right. And now, seeing the kids coming out of club, are you seeing any bad habits or things you wish club would work on with those setters that are coming up to that next level?
Nothing super specific. One thing I do know is like I've seen a lot of clubs that like only allow you to play just volleyball and you can't really play other sports. And we touched on it
Yeah.
in the beginning. I just think like cross training and not doing one thing all year long is super, super beneficial. So I know it's hard with schedules and you don't want kids missing practice, but then playing in games and stuff like that. But I do think like playing different sports is really just it's good for your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for your mind. It's good for so many reasons, but also too, I think sometimes kids are getting so specialized at such an early age.
Yeah.
So sometimes we even at our level we get middles who have never really even like done any ball control drills. Like they
Right.
just barely block, attack, sometimes serve. So I think for us in our gym, it's super important that everyone does a little bit of everything just to
Mm-hmm.
keep you well-rounded, just an overall good volleyball player. And I think sometimes clubs can kind of just say, okay, well, you're a setter, you're gonna set, serve, maybe block, maybe play defense. I wish sometimes it was everyone did a little bit more of everything.
Yeah. All right. And now, from a coaching philosophy standpoint, you're around some great coaches. Are there any significant lessons you've learned that have helped you become a better coach?
I would say a really good role model for me is Tyler Hildebrand because he was my coach my senior year, and then I went on to go on and work with him. So as a player, you see what your coaches do and you see how hard they work, but you don't know it really until you're up in the office and hearing the discussions and watching what they're watching and looking at these 50-page packets of stats that the coaches have to look at. But one thing I really, really respected about Tyler was just he was such a student of the game and he would just watch all these different teams and all these different setters with like no bias. And he would just kind of see, okay, this is what the five best setters in the world are doing. And they're all doing it a little bit differently and showing all these different examples and not saying, hey, you need to set exactly this way because that's what I said. It
Yeah.
was very like we had a good relationship and it was like I could say something to him and he could say something to me and we could find some middle ground. And so I think the big thing as I'm talking through it now I'm gathering is like it was just he gave me ownership over my game.
Yeah.
And so then working with him and watching the way he did that was really, really cool. And just the way he could let you fail and learn and then, especially in training, whether it was setter training or in a slower drill, like, hey, we're working on setting this ball. Like, it might not be pretty, but let's try it. And then when we get into a 6-on-6 scenario, like, okay, now we're trying to win the drill, right? So he was really good at kind of compartmentalizing, like training versus playing,
Mm-hmm.
and just what you're focused on during both of those times. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I've really taken from him is just hey, it's okay to fail here. We're working on stuff you're not very good at. Let's work through it. Now we're playing. Go compete, go win that drill, and then hopefully some of those things slowly transfer over.
All right. Cool. Now I got a couple of questions from a high school player and a coach. One
Okay.
is, as a setter, how can they develop a better volleyball IQ?
Mm, that's a tough one. I think just watching, honestly, just watching other people, watching other setters, and one thing we like to do too is like watch international and say, okay, why do you think they made that choice? So I think the biggest thing for setting is offense and choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. Everyone has different philosophies about what they want to do,
Yeah.
but I think we try and watch and we'll just talk through it. Why they make that choice? What do you think might have been better? What would you have done in this scenario? So I think, I guess for younger players, when they're watching, if they're watching college or if they're watching international on YouTube, not just like watching and appreciating, but like, hey, why are they doing these things? Especially for setting, just because it's so, so difficult. So I would say just kind of watching with a learning mindset, um, and just thinking about what you might do if you were in their shoes.
All
And
right.
then I think just also like fun drills where you have to kind of problem solve. I
Yeah.
think that's always fun. And we're even trying to figure out how to do that in our gym rather than just doing our 6-on-6 drills we usually do. How are we going to put them in a situation where the 6 people on the court need to problem solve? So
Yeah.
I think maybe some drill design too, and just kind of you guys figure it out type mentality, because
Yeah.
then you have no choice but to learn at that point.
Yeah, and it's so true. With a setter problem solving, looking across who are the bigger blockers. Okay, there's a shorter blocker out there. Let's feed the back. All of that decision making and processing is so huge to develop.
I think too with offense, you can have your core values and what you want to accomplish and how you want to attack other teams, but it could completely change in a match.
Yeah.
So being adaptable, being level-headed, especially as a setter, is huge. You can't be emotional or feel like everything's always your fault. You have to just see the game for what it is and what's working right now. Okay, maybe I don't usually set this player in this situation, but she's hot. I'm
Right.
gonna take a risk and set her now. But I think it changes during the match. And I think to my point earlier about watching film and why are you making the choices you're making, if you do all of that work in an office where there's no stress and you can just talk through it, it's so much easier on the court because I've been in that place where you're thinking about who do I need to set? Why do I need to set them? Who's
Mm-hmm.
doing good? And like when you just feel so tense and then you're making sets that you wouldn't normally make and then probably your location and stuff is suffering from that. So I
Yeah.
think for me it's super important to do the work in a low stress environment, talk about what we want to accomplish and why, and then when we start playing it can be easier and lighter.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. And the second question: what were some of the little things that you learned over the years that made you a better setter?
Hmm. I think one of the biggest things is just I think when I was taught setting when I was younger, it's left, right, square up, finish to the target every single time. And I think that's a good base and it's a good to have structure, especially with setting, because if you just come out there and you say, I don't know, set the ball over there, like it's going to be kind of hard. But I think now that's just not realistic that you're going to have your feet to every ball. You're going to be perfectly squared up to left front. You're just going to be able to finish straight to your target. That's just, it's not realistic, especially at our level. So I think,
Well, even at high school level, those passes are all over the place.
yeah,
Getting that left, right. You're not. That's it's like a Christmas gift.
yeah, exactly. If you're in a perfect pass, left, right, square up, that happens not super often. But I would say just understanding that it's okay to not be so strict like in your setting technique. It's
Yeah.
okay to come off the net. I can't square up and I can like just finish with my arms, which it's really hard at a young age to try and teach that just because
Mm-hmm.
it's so ambiguous and so vague. But I think it just makes it easier for you and you're
Yeah.
not stressed about I need to sprint to this ball and get all the way squared up. It's just not realistic. And so I think I've learned that there's there's a lot of different ways to be a great setter. You could go watch the top 10 best setters in the world and they all probably set differently.
Uh huh.
So I've learned like who am I to tell our two setters how they should set the ball exactly.
Right.
Like obviously we have our core values
Mm-hmm.
and some basic technique stuff, but our two setters are different in the way they set the ball. So just kind of acknowledging that every setter has their strengths, a little bit of a different style. How do we find like some core values
Yeah.
that translates to everybody? And then how do we kind of understand the individual athlete and some of their tendencies and that
Yeah.
type of stuff?
Excellent. All right. So a couple of fun things here before we wrap up. What's your take on the double rule? Now that you've had a few games, played, and as a setter, do you find yourself sometimes forgetting? It's like, oh my God, it's a double, and then oh yeah, that's right, that's the new rule.
Yeah. At first, I mean, everyone asked me this question. I'm like, a double isn't an advantage for your team. If you double it, it's not an advantage. So, like, if you're doubling, you're probably not setting a good ball anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, I don't really mind the rule. Like, obviously, everyone prefers a pretty set, but if the ball gets where it needs to go, usually you're not doubling it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, we've really only seen it come into play where it comes over the net,
Yep.
because that's the rule now, is like once it goes over, there's definitely some there that maybe could have been called
Yeah.
or stuff like that. But I just think like the refs don't want to call that.
Nope.
It's just, it's not fun for anyone to get called on a double, but I think it's good. It encourages a lot of scramble plays,
Right.
non-setters setting the ball. But in our gym, we always joke, we're like, that's legal chowder, because before, if someone doubled, would be like chowder, or kind of heckle them.
Yeah.
But now everyone's like, it's legal, I'm fine.
Yep.
So it's kind of a joke now. But yeah, the biggest thing in games that we've seen is just when it's going over the net, and
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's that split second decision for the ref, and they're like, I'm just not going to blow my whistle, and people get fired up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I talked to Matt Ulmer from Oregon, he described it as like it's a quarterback that throws a duck, as bad pass. The receiver's got to adjust. It's a disadvantage to the hitter. So,
Yeah.
if it's a doubles, the hitter's not going to get that sweep pass to crush that ball.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see any setters doing anything differently because of the rule, or
Yeah.
trying to make these crazy plays, just because like I said, and you just said too, it's not an advantage.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
absolutely.
it's okay.
All right. So I have, when Eric showed you was on, him and Taylor Averill had this thing. What is the toughest position in volleyball? So now, with every guest that come on, I ask them that question. So, Kelly, what is the toughest position in volleyball?
I think my first thought goes to setting, just because it's so cerebral
Mm-hmm.
and you have to worry about so much. And I think there's a lot that goes into it that people don't even know, just how you're able to maybe take the responsibility when you know it wasn't your fault, and
Yeah.
just kind of that like nuance there. But I do not envy middle blockers
Nope.
at all. Like, they are constantly moving, constantly jumping. Usually they're not getting set that often, depending on your team. So I
Right.
think, and I think any position that has to go in for three and out for three is just hard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could never go in and out of a game like that. So I think that's another mental barrier for them. But yeah, I do not envy the middles by any means.
No. And, they've got to be there. That one time they get that set, they got to be there. If they're not, they're getting cussed out or whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a saying on our team right now. It's like, we're playing the invisible game. Like, middles, even if you're not getting set, you're doing something. So
Mm-hmm.
they're just busting to get up no matter where it is, or even if they don't think they can, they're playing the invisible game, and they've really embraced that, which is kind of fun to watch them do.
Nice. All right. Well, hey, away from the court, what are some things you like to do when there's nothing volleyball related going on?
Not super often that
Yeah.
happens. But for me, I love cooking. So I grew up watching the Food Network. I've just always loved cooking. So my social media is like all recipes and everything. And so I love an off day, going to the grocery store, getting everything, making a nice dinner, and all of that. And I I kind of joke that like chopping up vegetables is my therapy. Like I know they have those slap chop things now where you can
Yeah.
just like slam it down there. I'm like, no, I need 30 minutes of cutting up vegetables for therapy.
Yeah.
So I would say that's my biggest thing. Other than that, I just love like being with my friends and spending time at home with my fiance, and just kind of, honestly, what do they call it? Rotting, where you
Yeah.
just kind of chill all
Mm-hmm.
day long.
All
That's
right.
that's my big thing. So cooking and rotting.
Okay. And now, what would your fiance say is your best meal you make?
Ooh. I feel like we just talked about this, but we actually make something together that's kind of interesting. Carbonara.
Oh,
It's like the
okay.
Italian dish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Funny story. I don't know why we've always been into that. We've been to Italy one time for one of my best friend's weddings, but we started trying to make carbonara before that, and studied all these recipes and put like five of them together and made it our own. So we get to Italy and we can't check in until 3 or 4 or whatever. So we stop for lunch. I'm like, okay, well, let's order carbonara. And AJ, my fiance, goes, I think ours is going to be better. I'm like, okay. So we tried. He's like, nope, this is so much better. I'm like, well, yeah, we're in Italy. They have like
Right.
all the best ingredients, but he was really confident in our carbonara skills. It is really, really good, but we kind of tag team it. He makes the noodles and I
Yeah.
do the sauce. So he makes them by hand, which
Oh,
is
wow.
Pretty
That's the
impressive.
next
Yeah,
level.
it's our tag team kind of recipe there.
Nice. All right. Well,
Yeah.
hey Kelly, thank you for doing this pod. But before you go, one question with every guest, I ask them to suggest somebody in your volleyball circle that would have a great story to come on and share.
Ooh, in my circle. Obviously, my mind goes right to Jordan Larson because she's literally done anything and everything out there, played everywhere, played at every
Yeah.
single level, and is now coaching. So I mean, she's such an inspiration, not only to our players and to the girls in Nebraska and girls all over the country, but
Right.
to me specifically too. So she's got a good story and so much good knowledge to share. So maybe that's the easy answer, but she's just got so much to
Yep.
share. So
All
I
right.
would bet on her.
Well, we'll get you to twist her arm, and at some point, we'll get her on.
Hey, perfect. I
All
can do
right.
that.
Well, hey, thank you so much. Good luck with the rest of the season.
Okay, thank you for having me. This was fun.